What up, world? Welcome to episode 105 of the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Wright, coming to you from the beautiful and spring-like confines of Atlantic City, New Jersey. Wherever you may be watching or listening, I thank you as always. Like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel. You can check the Blunt Talk Sports Podcast out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Substack, Patreon, Trovo, and as well as on Podbean. Looking to get out this weekend, looking to take your spouse out, have a great time with some friends, then look no further than the number one leading ticket seller and reseller in the world, StubHub. Number one seller in the world for live events, tickets, shows, and concerts, StubHub. This episode exclusively will be a Patreon exclusive, so you'll be able to catch it there first, and then numerous various sites after that. But getting into this episode, guys, this episode is going to be dedicated to the NFL owners meetings. I have a bunch of updates, a lot of topics to get into. There'll be more content coming at the end of the week discussing the owners meetings, but I definitely wanted to make sure that I brought this episode to you today. Hopping right into it, we're going to start off now. I basically watched some of the GM interviews first. I wanted to make sure that I got exactly what these guys were saying out of their mouth, and then give you my take from it from there. We're going to start with Chris Ballard, who, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated GMs in football. He's the GM of the Indianapolis Colts. Chris Ballard spoke actually at length, not too long, but at length, about various things dealing with the Colts. Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, the process going forward, how things have been since Andrew Luck. A ton of things that have just gone on for this snake-bitten franchise, which they have been. The Indianapolis Colts have been snake-bitten since Andrew Luck left. Or retired, I should say. That being said, I liked a lot of what Chris Ballard said. He preached competition for Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones. Talked about, trying to, let the cream rise to the cream of the crop rise to the top. Not aiding or abetting any of these guys, allowing the process to play out. In all honesty, what this basically says to me is they want Anthony Richardson to be the quarterback. However, they are very much comfortable that if Daniel Jones plays better, they're very much comfortable with benching him, which says a lot about a guy that you drafted in the first round only a couple years ago. He also spoke at length about not making excuses, which I think is a huge thing for teams and general managers alike to follow that precedent. Not making excuses and continuing to hunt for the quarterback that they need. You heard me allude to it a little bit earlier. They've been snake bitten since they've lost Andrew Luck. It's been a fucked up process, and no disrespect to Andrew Luck. I completely understand if your body and your mind is just not in it anymore. You're not willing to take that beating. You want to do other things. I can't blame you for walking away. You got the money, and even if he didn't play football with his intelligence, going to Stanford, he could have done anything that he fucking wanted to do and been successful. The reality of the situation is, though, for the Colts, they've been fucking screwed since. I mean, they damn near have the Cleveland Colts jersey list of names of quarterbacks Carson Wentz, Phillip Rivers, Matt Ryan, Jacoby Brissett. I mean, you name it. It's been a bunch of guys going through those doors, and it just really has not worked out. Joe Flacco, Richardson, but Minshew. I mean, it's just a shitload of names. So I give him props for that. And he also, too, had a little funny comment referencing the anonymous sources, speaking about young guys like, Shedeur Sanders and speaking about some of these other players in the draft. And I love what Chris Ballard said. Ultimately, if you feel some type of way about these guys, put your fucking name on it. Put your fucking name on it. Don't sit there and, talk shit in the shadows and creep behind and get Twitter fingers and shit. Nah. Say what you need to say in front of everybody and address it and allow people to challenge your opinion. But, you know how some people operate. And going forward, next interview was with bradholmes, Lions GM. He's been a GM now for a couple years. He branched out of the Los Angeles Rams organization and became the GM of the Rams. He actually brought Jared Goff with him in a trade not too long afterwards. He spoke about a lot of different things. I definitely, his interview was one of the longer ones. He spoke about how humbling the experience has been at GM, talking about how much he's learned throughout the process. The optimism that he had for trading for Jared Goff, because we have to be honest, and he was honest himself speaking on this, we all did not know if Jared Goff was going to work out. if the guy who helped get him, who coached him up to get this team to a Super Bowl, speaking of Sean McVay, if he gave up on him, why the fuck would anybody else think that he'd be worth a damn? So I give Bradholmes immense credit for trusting Jared Goff. I always felt like Jared Goff had a bad rap. I knew what he could do. I knew what he couldn't do. I wouldn't expect anything more out of him. I'm not expecting Patrick Mahomes, but I do understand that he's a guy that can win a shootout. He's a guy that can win you a tough game. So we like them in those aspects. Outside of that, we all know without a decent offensive line, he folds like a wet napkin. A lot of quarterbacks do, unfortunately, but it's one of his primary flaws. But he talked about how, Goff had a lot of age and a lot left in the tank and his maturity and why he believed that that's why he would excel. And, that's definitely a gamble that's paid off for him so far. He spoke about how, he got Goff, Dan Campbell got Goff to buy in by allowing him to earn the trust, which I think is key for a lot of young quarterbacks. I think when you have a young quarterback, especially whose confidence is shot, a la Jared Goff, a Trey Lance, guys in that ilk, not saying that Trey Lance is on the level of Jared Goff, but I'm just speaking to the confidence. You need a guy that believes in you. You need a guy that can come in there and put his arm around you and say, hey, look, we're going to get this shit done. I got you. I see the bullshit too. We're going to work through it. Let's work on the controllables. That is something that I definitely feel like Jared Goff, lacked prior to Sean McVay. Now that once he had Sean McVay, he just wasn't good enough to get him over the top. I completely understand why Sean McVay made the move. However, it has definitely benefited Detroit getting this guy. He's been the best quarterback they've had since Matt Stafford. And I would argue getting him to an NFC Championship game, he did more than what Matt Stafford did there. So got to give him credit for that. Also, some interesting comments. He spoke about Jameson Williams, young star wide receiver, taking the next step. I have to be honest with you. Jameson Williams, in my opinion, is going to outplay himself out of a contract in Detroit, and I think he may be elsewhere. And it's not that I'm wishing that on him. I just think that he's that good of a talent where are they going to financially be able to keep him and Amon-Ra St. Brown and the tight end and Jahmyr Gibbs? And you're paying the linemen too. So you got to understand, you're paying a lot of people. So not sure how all that shapes out. In my personal opinion, I just feel like Jameson Williams is going to be somewhere else. He's not going to finish his career as a Detroit Lion. Jahmyr Gibbs, he talked about Jahmyr Gibbs earning a more increased workload due to what he showed last season, playing with that tough, physical, and aggressive style. I like Jahmyr Gibbs a lot. The Detroit Lions took a lot of shit for trading DeAndre Swift to the Philadelphia Eagles and drafting Jahmyr Gibbs as high as they did. They pretty much gave a big fuck you to the rest of the NFL. And, the scouts that, pretty much doubted him in that move. That was clearly a great move. And I can see him getting more of an increased workload because, in all honesty, two things it tells me about those comments. One, they're going to be drafting a running back. Two, David Montgomery's injury let them know that he might have lost a step and he may not be what he once was. So we'll see how that all shapes out. Also, one of the two biggest things I wanted to talk on in reference to Bradholmes that I vehemently disagree with. The one was the removal of the automatic first down after illegal contact penalty. Look, man, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I get it. He stated it. They play a lot of man coverage. They play a lot of aggressive style of defense. Stop being so fucking handsy then. Yeah. You can coach aggressive defense without being handsy. That's up to the coaches to do a better job and coach the players up. The NFL is not going to change a rule wholesale because it doesn't benefit you, So I that was kind of crazy. And then the other one too, the playoff seeding, which was even fucking crazier. Having it where the team gets the higher seed based off their record and not winning the division. Why don't we just get rid of divisions then? I know the argument that back in 2002 with the realignment, it kind of minimized the division play. I understand some of that to a degree. I'm old enough to remember it. However, that's not necessarily true. There's still an emphasis on winning the division. There's still a primary emphasis on winning those division games and how it shapes out going into the postseason for you. So it's erroneous to me that you would even think this. Now, I do think that Bradholmes' argument as far as by doing this would make every game count, and this is basically going to force it to be like college football, maybe. But I think there's a way that you could do it without having to change the whole seeding and minimizing the division. And once you start minimizing divisions, at that point, it just starts becoming a mismatch of bullshit. Oh, well, just get it, base it off the records. Where there's going to be teams some years where they're going to be log jam at 14-3. So then what do we go down then? The schedule? Straight the schedule, right? So it just seems like a clusterfuck for me. I don't think either one gets passed by the Detroit Lions. Can't knock them for trying, but definitely don't see that going through. And then we go a little bit further here with the Bears president of football operations, Kevin Warren. And that guy is very interesting. He spoke on a bunch of different things. His interview was almost 30 minutes. I took out of it as much as I could. Most important things, first thing they touched on was Matt Eberflus. He spoke on, being patient with Eberflus in that process, and thinking positively, and then, trying to needle it and make the right decision. And even though things didn't necessarily work out the way they wanted it to, they were happy that they made a positive decision and convinced ownership to get off of him, instead of dragging it out and having a lame duck coach, pretty much in the last 4 to 6 weeks of the season, knowing he's going to get fired. I definitely commend him on that. It sucked that Eberflus got fired, but I definitely understand why he went about it the way he did. Eberflus wasn't really fit out to be a head coach. Offense coordinator, yes. Head coach, no. He also spoke on Ben Johnson. I think this is very emphatic. He emphatically stated that he knew within 10 minutes of the interview that, Ben Johnson would be the coach. I don't think there was much convincing, of that there. Ben Johnson, bright offensive young mind. Seems like a lot of people were very much galvanized by Ben Johnson and very much liked what they thought he could do potentially for this roster, and what he was doing in Detroit itself and how he coached up that roster. So not a shock there. Interesting thing, though, that he got into that I definitely wanted to tap into was the stadium project. Now, this has been a big thing of contention. Now, from my previous employer that was primarily based out in the Midwest, I know a lot of people out there are Bears fans or Browns fans. And for you Bears fans, I know you guys have definitely been paying attention to this whole stadium deal thing. Not really sure how you're going to feel about these comments, but Kevin Warren spoke about, that the conversations are still going with the museum campus and Arlington Heights. And that, they're basically Arlington Heights are the biggest and largest landowner in that area, which is pretty indicative of that's pretty much where they're leaning to go is Arlington Heights. He did say that the stadium will be domed, which, I'm an NFL purist. I'm very much, as young as I am, I'm a nod to the throwback. Be out there in below freezing temperatures, try to win a football game, be out there in the monsoon. The elements are the elements. That just makes the game even more interesting. But in this wave of make stadiums generating revenue, I completely understand, you're trying to sell concerts. Like he stated, Final Fours, Super Bowls. He talked about Chicago's never hosted a Super Bowl, which, again, cold as it fucking gets, I understand. Essentially making more money with more events. And, he talked about how NFL has become more of a global game. He didn't really give an answer on the tushpush. He was kind of vague on that. He very much speaks like a politician. So I can see where people sometimes get rubbed wrong by Kevin Warren. Not really a huge fan of his. He definitely talks like a politician, which kind of rubs me wrong a little bit. But I understood a lot of the key points that he touched on. For Bears fans that are big enthusiasts of outdoor stadiums, I'm sorry. It looks like you're definitely not going to no longer have one. But the question of where the fuck the stadium will go, it looks like it's definitely leaning towards Arlington Heights. Going down south, great old state of Texas. Going to touchdown in Dallas, where Jerry Jones. Now, granted, these comments were made at the Palm Springs Resort at the owners' meetings, but, geographically, Dallas Cowboys. Anyway, Jerry Jones, on his comments on Michael Parsons and his contract and not knowing David Malgetta, who is, you guys heard me reference this guy in videos before, who's the biggest agent in football, athletes first. If I know who the fuck David Malgetta is, I'm pretty sure Jerry Jones knows who he is. But nonetheless, you can see the comments here. Jerry's doing this bullshit again. His song and dance that he normally pulls with the media around this time whenever there's a big name Cowboys player up for a contract. This is a game. He's running game again. I'm not enthused. I'm not impressed. He has a history of trying to eliminate the agents. There's teams of articles, teams of players that can definitely attest to this. There's definitely some players that I know for a fact that he worked deals out without the agent even being present. So this is a game that he runs, especially when he knows he's about to pay a lot of fucking money. I love the response though by Michael Parsons and what you can see here. Michael Parsons is not playing that shit. Smart young man. Do not deal with a shark like Jerry Jones without, proper protection, without that cage. Get that agent, have that agent doing the deal, break the bank, force Jerry to pay that fucking tab. And then most importantly, what I thought was just the most egregious fucking statement out of all this shit. Worse than eliminate the agent, which is also a CBA violation, for the collective bargaining agreement. What I think is even crazier is that he said, and there's a rumor that came out yesterday in the Dallas Morning Star, it was released that the Cowboys have offered Michael Parsons a contract that would make him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. That's without stating that we know he would get that, being that, Jamar Chase and Max Crosby and some other guys that just got paid, Myles Garrett. So these comments come off as bullshit. There's no substantive fact to the structure of the contract or anything like that. It's just Jerry and his minions and his people out there just putting out shit. Again, running game. Talk to me when a contract is presented in front of Michael Parsons. Other than that, this is just dead fucking news. Jerry don't really have much to report because his team ain't really got much hope this fucking year. So he's just trying to do whatever he can to just soak up as much media attention as possible. It's fucking pathetic. It really is. It's just same song and dance. Going to another owner, we're going to Jet York, owner of the San Francisco 49ers. Jet York made some very, very, what I think, startling comments yesterday. And not for the reasons that you would typically think. As you can see here in the photo, in the caption, the question was, is Brock Purdy a top 10 quarterback? And you always got to take heed to how owners and people of authority or people in power answer these questions, because there's always a preference. And the answer was quite startling. He emphatically started out by saying yes, and then the answer came, where he stated that he likes Purdy with Kyle and the current system and personnel that they have with him. So he feels that with Kyle Shanahan and the players that they have with him, he's a top 10 quarterback, which is basically saying what I and multiple others have said on various other networks and news and sports podcasts. Brock Purdy ain't it. Okay? Brock Purdy, there's a reason he went in the 7th round. There was a reason he was Mr. Irrelevant. It's nice. I even heard Chris Ballard mention this in his interview. You're like, I don't know why he went late. I don't know why he went last. He was a 4-year starter. We knew a lot about him. It's okay, Chris. He was small, and his hands were small. That's why you didn't take him. Now, all that being said, he's been effective. He helped the team get to 2 NFC Championship games, helped the team get to a Super Bowl. So I'm not going to scoff at that. But I'm also going to keep in mind, too, that Jimmy Garoppolo did that as well. So all of this being said, I have the strong belief, based off those comments, he's definitely going to get paid. I just don't think they're going to overpay for him, which is going to make this a very, very interesting process as we go along the way. As you see here in the comments from Jed York, it's going to be up to Brock Purdy when they work the deal out. That just basically said everything I needed to know there. They feel he's good within Kyle's system. They don't feel he's good anywhere else or outside of it. So they're not going to overpay for him. So will he get Dak Prescott money? I don't know. Remains to be seen. And last but not least, we're going to touch up on Roger Goodell, commissioner of the NFL, and his comments on a bunch of different topics. Primarily, though, I'm just going to touch on these 3 main topics, the tushpush, flag football launching in 2028, and the Justin Tucker allegations. Start with the tushpush, of course. To me, and you guys will see Roger Goodell's comments right here. To me personally, it seems like he's the type of guy that wants to ban it. He seems like a dickhead that would do something like that. However, he stated about needing more medical evidence and needing more information before he bans it or, before it's banned. I got to be quite honest. To me, this shit is all an excuse. Teams can't stop it. So they're trying to use medical safety and player safety and the letter of the law and all this bullshit to suffice that they can't stop the fucking play. It's very sad. It's very whack. It's very indicative of how weak the NFL is and soft the NFL has become. But this is what it is. This is what we've been subjugated to. Now, they clearly didn't have enough votes to ban it. So they're going to table it until May. They're going to allow teams to come with their little bullshit and their little argument. I still don't think it gets banned, but we shall see. It's the NFL. We've been shocked before. Next big announcement was going to talk about flag football in 2028. Roger Goodell said it's expected to be big. Several key notes. He said the NFL players want to participate in it, which I think is fantastic. I think that only helps the flag football game. I'm a purist. I like, tackle football, putting the pads on, running routes, guys, playing through the elements, physicality, willpower, I'm all for that. That's what I played growing up. That's what I enjoy watching. But flag football is exciting. Flag football is fun. There's a lot of great things a lot of great skill players that you can witness watching flag football. I played flag football before myself. It's a very interesting game. That being said, the league is also placing a big emphasis on women's sports and women's leagues and youth leagues. The NFL is genius. If you really pay attention to this, what this really is they're creating a lane for women to watch the game consistently and ultimately building a pipeline of, hey, you don't want to play tackle? We got flag. If you want to play tackle football, though, you can transition from flag to tackle. It's no problem. They're letting you know they're covering all lanes. This is why the NFL is king. That's why the NFL has a stranglehold on all sports and all topics. I mean, listen, guys, it's April 2nd, 2025. You can be doing whatever the hell you want. And you're sitting here witnessing me talk about the NFL. The NFL's got it on smash, man. They got it on smash. And then also, too, what I thought was important because, speaking on a topic like this, the number one thing you're going to need is investors. And I like the fact that he already spoke about they already have potential investors on hand. 23-time Grand Slam champion Serena Williams, Indiana Fever guard Caitlin Clark, and also Reddit co-founder Alex Ohanian, who just happens to be Serena Williams' husband. And also two-time Super Bowl MVP and Super Bowl champion Eli Manning, who also is going to be an investor. Now, Serena and her husband, Alex Ohanian, have already submitted a bid to the NFL to invest in flag football. So this is definitely going to happen. I know Jalen Hurts was the spokesman in the commercial for the flag football going in the Olympics. This is just, again, this is outstanding for the league. This is just going to help grow the game, just grow more eyeballs to the game, make the game more interesting. The NFL is ahead of the curve, and I got to give them credit for this. And last but not least, he spoke on the Justin Tucker allegations, which there's about 16 claims now of sexual misconduct being alleged against Justin Tucker, which just is, prime DeshaunWatson real estate territory again for the NFL. But I think the NFL and Roger Goodell have learned from past mistakes. Roger Goodell's quote, and you guys will see here on the screen, the league's review is still in process and no updates will be provided until conclusions are reached. It seems like Goodell has definitely learned from his past mistakes and not going out on a limb and suspending guys or making a bunch of preemptive or presumptions before the evidence is bear fruit and before things have played out. So got to give Roger Goodell credit there. Outside of that, don't ban the tushpush. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. I thank you guys for always watching. Again, like, share, and subscribe. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.